I'm going to have a look at the frog pencil case. So I've done a little bit of prep to get us started on this one. You're going to need your zip, you're going to need the 2 pieces for the top, the 2 pieces for the bottom, 2 pieces for the back, and you're going to need your bias binding. So everything's cut out and I'm going to start to show you how to put it together. So the first step is to add the zip. So what you're going to need to do is pin in place a front and a back piece either side of that zip, and you're going to want to get it as accurate as you can so that the edges all line up properly once you finish. You can just see that was a little bit out there, so I need to just nudge that up a touch. Now before you go ahead and put these on, it does say in the instructions just to fold that 1/4 inch seam and press it. That's going to help you when you put this together. So do these one at a time, stitch that one on, and then do the same again and stitch this one in place. And you can see the zip forms the mouth of the frog. So once this is in place, you just need to make sure that before you go ahead and stitch it, that everything's lined up and these pieces are straight. So the side of this top piece lines up with the side of the bottom piece, and all of those edges and sides line up perfectly before you stitch those straight lines in. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch those in, and then we'll get on to the rest of the construction. I'm just attaching this second half to the zip here, and firstly you'll notice my zip is longer than I need, and that's so I can keep that slider right out the way and have a really nice easy time sewing this section here. And I've also got a zipper foot on here so I can get really nice and close, and I'm talking about 1/8 of an inch away from that zip. So that's going to encompass both of my 1/4 inch seam allowances that have been turned over and the tape for the zip as well. So I'm going to sew along this second side and then we'll start putting the thing together. So that's the zip side complete, and you can see at the bottom here I've ran off a little bit, but everything's stitched correctly on the back, so I'm not worried about that, and I'll just cut that excess piece off later. Now I'm going to take the 2 backing pieces. So there's the back of your frog and there's the lining, so we're going to line those up on top of each other. Then we're going to add the front as well, make sure they're all nicely lined up on top of each other, and then I'm going to put a load of pins in place to hold this all in position. Once I've got everything in position, I'm just going to open that zip and put it in the center of his mouth, because then when I sew all the way around the outside, it's not going to get in the way of my needle as I'm sewing. Now when I'm sewing around the edge of here, I'm starting just after this zip, and I'm also keeping this slider out of the way while I'm doing this, because that will give me the chance to fix 90% of what I need before I have to come back and sew this part here. So I'm going to go ahead and start that now. Now I'm right on the edge here, and I'm just checking that I'm catching all of those layers as I'm coming around. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking I might have to just bring that needle in just a touch. That's fine, I think we're catching all them. And then you're going to go around with what we call either a scant 1/4, or you're going to want just about 1/8 of an inch. Now you see now that back one is a little bit light, so I'm just going to adjust this. You're not going to see this stitching because this stitching is going to be hidden by your bias binding, which will go over the top. Okay, so I'm stitched all the way around. You'll notice I've swapped to a black thread on here. That's for no other reason than I didn't have a lot of green left, and I wanted to keep that for top stitching my binding on. So that's the only reason I've done that, and I've made sure that I've slid that zipper back in before I got to that end, because otherwise it was going to get trapped on the outside. So now I've stitched all the way around and that zip's secured, I can take off those excess pieces of zip on either end, and then we can start to add the bias binding. So the bias binding, as I said before, is 1 inch thick and it's folded in half, so you get a 1/2 inch thick. Now this is cotton bias binding, and we'll match the fabric that we've got on there perfectly. So I've got to decide where I want my join, because ultimately we're going to go round in a circle and there will be a join on here somewhere. So I'm going to keep my join in line with the rock that is here. And then I'm going to sandwich that either side and work my way around with the pins, holding everything in place. And with this type of thing, the more pins, the merrier. Now, if you have got any bits like that, where you've got bits overlapping or you've got extra bits sticking out, you can just whiz round and tidy them up a little bit before you start. Let's check the other ends. Yeah, they're not so bad. So you can tidy those up before you start, and now it's just a case of take your time and put plenty of pins in there. Now when you get to corners like that where you think, oh well, that's a little bit baggy, I'm not sure how happy I am with that, if you take this to the ironing board and use a little bit of steam on this bias binding, what you'll find is you'll be able to stretch it that little bit more and get those corners to flatten out nicely. So I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll pin all this in place and come back and show you the finished item when it's all stitched. I'm almost all the way around here, adding the binding onto my pencil case, but I just wanted to show you quickly this part here. So when you get all the way around, you actually just want to fold a little tab on your binding and tuck it under, and then that will sit either side of there. If you've got a little bit like that that's just sticking out, what you can do is either fold it in again or just press that in a tiny bit further than it currently is, and then that will get hidden. So press those in, fold that up, pop that on, and then you can see that that little tiny corner hides itself within there. So that's my last little bit to stitch, so I'll just hold that in place, make sure it's lined up, stitch this final little stretch in place. Put a little fixed stitch on there just to hold everything in place. So there's our finished froggy pencil case with a little zip opening for the mouth, and all lovely and lined inside. You could even go a bit further and draw tongues and things on there before you stitch it in if you wanted to. So that is your froggy pencil case project.